I hope everybody can see this slide that says to finesse or not to finesse. I think this is an important presentation because while most of us know what a finesse is, particularly when we first learn to play, it's like a new toy and we want to use it all the time, but there really are better ways of setting up suits sometimes than finessing, because finessing is only a 50-50 proposition, and most of the better players around want something with a little better odds. So the best thing to do is do what Eddie Cantor calls taking all your chances or combining your chances at bridge. So sometimes we'll want to finesse and other times we won't. And that's what our subject for discussion is this morning. Now, one of the first things when we're teaching newer players how to play the game, one of the first play techniques for establishing a working suit, and the working suit is just the one that contains potential tricks and is the one you're trying to set up for the tricks you need to make your contract. We teach newer players to use the finesse. And most of them get that idea pretty well. First off, there are a couple that I've seen that have had some trouble with it. But if you just remember that after all, a finesse is nothing more than leading up toward the honor you're trying to make good. That's all it is. Leading toward an honor you're trying to make good. But as I said, that's only a 50% likelihood of success for you. There are other things that, when tried in combination with a finesse, if your first technique doesn't work, really greatly enhance your chances of finding the tricks that you need. So what are some of the things that you can do instead of just falling back on the finesse to make your contract? Well, sometimes, if you're fortunate enough to have plenty of honors in both hands, sometimes you can avoid a finesse in one suit by dropping an honor in another suit. That's a little harder to see initially, but it is really a good technique to use. Now, in this first example, I show you where north starts out. The contract is 4 hearts by west. You are west, and east is the dummy hand over here. North starts out, that's west's left-hand opponent, starts out by leading the ace and king of diamonds. And he continues with a third one. And of course, your queen doesn't stand up here in the dummy because south roughs the third round. He gets out with a spade, which you take with one of your honors. Can you avoid the club finesse is the question. That only gives you a 50-50 shot of making this contract. Well, if you look at the dummy, you would give half your worldly goods for that jack of spades to be the queen of spades, wouldn't you? Then there'd be no problem at all. You could unblock your ace and king of spades, go to the dummy with the ace of clubs and play that queen of spades to drop the other club, and you're home free. But that's not the hand that your partner was dealt. He was dealt the jack and not the queen. So we only have 5 of them between us. That means there are 8 outstanding between the other 2 hands. Is it possible that the queen could be doubleton? Certainly it is. You need to remember the bidding when you're thinking about which technique to use as well. Did someone overcall a weak 2 spades, for instance, having 6 of them? Being able to drop a doubleton queen in this instance means that the outstanding spades have to be divided 6-2. Still, it's a chance. And one chance is better than no chance. So what you can try here is playing off both spade honors. And if the queen drops, you're home free. You no longer need the club finesse. If it doesn't, you can still fall back on the club finesse. That's called combining your chances. And Eddie Cantor has written 2 rather large books on the subject. By combining chances like that, you really enhance the probability that you are going to make your contract. But in this case, I mean, I don't know whether the queen drops or not, but that's not the point. The point is that this represents an extra chance for you that you can try rather than taking this club finesse immediately. Because after all, if it turns out that the queen would have dropped doubleton and you have lost the club finesse, then you went down in a contract that was cold. And nobody ever wants to do that, do you? I don't know about the rest of you, but I hate it when I make stupid decisions like that and I go down in a cold contract. It's happened before and it will happen again, I'm sure. But try to remember that if you can drop an honor that will enable you to discard rather than taking a finesse, that this is certainly a good approach. Now, sometimes you have 4 cards in a suit and 3 cards in that suit in the other hand, a combined 7 cards in the suit. We all know, or at least I have said many times, that when you have 6 missing cards in a suit, they tend to split 4-2 rather than 3-3. The odds of a suit splitting 3-3, or the missing cards splitting 3-3 for you, are about 36%, which means that it's not 0. 36% is about 1 time in 3. But if you have the chance to set up a long card, the 4th card in the hand that has 4 cards in the suit, and taking a finesse, you might think, well, the finesse is a 50-50 shot. The 3-3 break is only a 36% shot. How about trying to set up that long card in the hand that holds four pieces in the suit in question? If that works, then you have a long card set up for an extra trick for a discard, and the finesse will no longer be needed. If it doesn't work, you can always fall back on the finesse. By combining your chances in this way, I think Eddie Cantor says that you increase the odds of success from 36 or 50% when considering each one individually, all the way up to nearly 80% by combining your chances. The important thing to remember, though, when you're utilizing this technique is that you must play off that 7-card suit first. Do that first and then take the finesse. That's usually the best way to maximize the number of tricks that you can take. Now, here are a couple of examples. Once again, West is in 4 hearts, and the opening lead is the king of diamonds. And of course, as opponents often do, they found your weak spot. So North leads the king and the queen of diamonds, and then leads a little one over to South's ace. South then leads a spade. Sometimes I think that opponents, and of course the reason he leads a spade rather than a club is he can see the weakness in the dummy in spades. How many times have I told you to turn your head 90 degrees to the right? And when you're on lead in that position, when the dummy's on the right, lead the weakest suit in sight. Well, now that the diamonds are gone, the weakest suit is spades. So, of course, South is going to lead a spade. I mean, this is just the way life goes at the bridge table, right? So, now then, should South finesse? He's already booked. Is there something else that could be done? Well, when I was teaching beginning bridge initially, I used the Easy Bridge curriculum, and Marty Ronimus is famous for saying that a 5-card suit in the dummy should never be ignored. Even one as weak as this one that East has. Notice you have 7 cards between you, but you're in a suit contract. So how about if you win the ace of spades, draw your trumps, and set up the clubs. If they're 3-3, which is 36%, or 4-2, that's almost 50%, the spade loser can go away on a long club. The secret to making this contract is to use the queen, jack, and 10 of hearts as entry to the dummy for leading clubs back to the declarer's hand and roughing high. When you're doing this kind of thing, you in effect have reversed the dummy. You're using the honors in the dummy to draw the trumps and as entries here. Notice that because you have the right cards here, these trumps, minor honors here in the dummy, are entries. Rather than using them to trump losers, because you notice there's nothing that we can rough in the dummy here, but they are high enough that they can be used to draw the opponent's trumps. So play the ace of clubs, lead to the king of clubs, lead another club back, rough high. The 9 and the 8 are just as high as the ace and king, but you get style points when you rough with the ace. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I like style points. I mean, if I'm the defender and the declarer does that, I roll my eyes, I'll be honest with you. But in this case, it preserves all these smaller trumps to use as entries over to the board. Once you've roughed the third round of clubs high, you now know whether or not these last 2 clubs are good. If both defenders follow, then your clubs are set up. And all you have to do is end up on the board when you finish drawing the trumps, and you have good clubs over here for pitching this losing spade that you have. So rather than finessing, this is a 100% certain way to make your contract unless the missing clubs are divided 5-1 or worse. If they are divided 5-1 or 6-0, you're not making the bid when you're trying to do this. But the odds of that happening are so small that I hardly ever consider it. As long as they're no worse than 4-2, I can set up a long club, and I have entries in the trump suit, not only for transportation for leading clubs, but also for drawing the trumps at the same time. So in this instance, this would be called taking a practice finesse. If you played the queen when your partner, or when South leads that spade after he takes the ace of diamonds, that would be a practice finesse. A practice finesse is one that is not needed. If it loses, you're down because you've already been booked. So look for other ways, particularly when there are 5-card suits in the dummy and you have only 2 of them in your hand and you're in a suit contract. You have the possibility of setting up a long card in the dummy for a discard, so long as they break reasonably. Okay, let's move on to a net possibility here. This time, it looks like maybe your partner overbid and you're in 6 no trump. You have 11 tricks, which is often the case when you're in a 6 no trump contract. What do we think? Do we have to take the club finesse? Is that our only option? Of course, we have 4 diamond tricks already because we have the 4 top cards and we have enough cards in each hand that we're going to get 4 tricks there. But we have another suit here, the heart suit, that has 7 cards in it. If the outstanding hearts break 3-3, then that 7 of hearts or 3 of hearts or whichever one is left in the dummy over there is the 13th heart and can be used to make your 12th trick. So that should be your first option. See if the hearts break 3-3. The best way to do that is by ducking on the first round. If you lead out the ace and king and both opponents follow, you still don't know whether the suit is breaking 3-3 or 4-2. The way my life goes is if they're not breaking 3-3 and they're 4-2, and I lead out both my heart honors, it's a lead pipe cinch that one person will hold the queen and jack, and I have just set up 2 heart tricks for the opponents. So start by ducking around rather than leading out your top trump or your top hearts. Sometimes, like for instance, when you're in a 3-no trump contract, you can afford to lead out the top hearts and then give up a trick. But you're in 6-no trump here. You can't afford to take the chance that one opponent has queen jack fourth. It could easily happen, easily. Or in this case, it might be queen 10 fourth and the other opponent has jack doubleton. The effect is the same. So the first thing you need to do here is duck a heart on the first round. You don't care who wins the trick because you've got control in the other suits. You win anything they fire back at you, and then play off the ace and king of hearts. If everybody follows, then that fourth heart in the dummy is your 12th trick. Then and only then should you try the club finesse if they don't break. Now you have to fall back on the club finesse, but by combining your chances there, you give yourself an increased chance of making this contract, and you may not even need that finesse. Sometimes, too, you can try trumping out a high honor in a side suit. This time we're in 6 diamonds by West here. Notice I'm not talking about the bidding much here because this is more about declarer play. We've talked a lot about bidding the last 2 or 3 years, lots and lots. Don't worry about how they get to 6 diamonds. That's not the point of these lessons today. Now we're in 6 diamonds and Mr. North leads the 5 of clubs. Look at this. South wins the ace, and of course you have to play your king. Look at this. We have the jack over here in the dummy. South switches to a heart, seeing the singleton there in the dummy. He switches to a heart, not realizing that you have it well taken care of, well covered. But of course, he's not giving anything up when he does that. So, can we avoid a finesse in spades? We've lost the ace of clubs. That's all we can lose. It would seem when looking at these hands that everything depends on the location of the king of spades. But you can try trumping out 2 clubs in the dummy. By now we have only 3 of them left, the jack, 8, and 7. We can try trumping out that 8 and 7 to see if 3 rounds will drop the queen. We have no idea which opponent holds the queen. It might be that South holds it, that he had the ace and the queen both. Notice what a mistake it would have been for him to play the queen here instead of the ace. Your singleton king wins a trick, and now you're home free. You're taking the spade finesse for an over trick. So South may have the queen, North may have the queen, but you can try trumping out 2 clubs in your hand after you've drawn the trumps, of course. And then if the queen drops, you still have the ace of spades on the board to get over to the jack to discard the other spade in the west hand. If it doesn't work, you can still fall back on the spade finesse. Sometimes that will work and sometimes it won't. But this looks to be a very good slam contract. It simply depends in this case on a finesse. That's a 50-50 shot. But if you try trumping out these clubs, the queen may drop, making the jack good for a discard, and you don't need to risk the finesse. But if the queen doesn't drop, you still have the chance of the spade finesse. So try trumping it out first. Notice before you take the finesse, you have to try trumping those losers first. The order of play is very important here. Sometimes you have a choice of 2 finesses. Which one am I going to take? Which one should I do? Notice in this hand, we're in 6 spades. We can try the diamond finesse, or we can lead the singleton club up toward the king of clubs. And if North holds the ace of clubs, then that king is set up for a diamond discard in the west hand. But if South holds the club ace, oops, here we are. Maybe we can avoid the diamond finesse, but we do have a second choice in the form of another finesse. On the other hand, if it does not work, you can still try the diamond finesse. And if it doesn't work, well, that's the way the cookie crumbles at the bridge table, isn't it? That's the way my life goes anyway. But if you take the diamond finesse first, then and it doesn't work, you're down for sure. Simply because you still have the opponents are going to cash the ace of clubs immediately to set you. So take the finesse that will enable you to make the contract if it works. Well, and actually both of them will enable you to make the contract if it works, because you'll be able to throw off the losing club if you can take the diamond finesse twice. So when you have the choice of two finesses, when you're playing in a suit contract, choose the one that gives you a chance to make the contract if it loses. Choose that one first. In this case, if you lose the diamond finesse first, you're a dead duck. But if you lose the club finesse, you still have a chance with the diamond finesse. So when you have a choice in this kind of situation, try to pick the one that isn't fatal immediately. That's the best way I can put it. Now, we come to a concept that involves a rather more advanced play technique. Some people call it a throw-in. Other people will call it a loser on loser, which it sometimes is. And other people call it an in-play. It's called an in-play because the opponent who gets the lead toward the end of the hand has no good alternatives for getting out. So in this case, the contract is 4 hearts by the west hand here. You can see that this pair has a frozen suit. That diamond holding there is known as a frozen suit. Queen and too small opposite jack and too small in any suit means that suit is frozen, because the side that leads it first gives an advantage to the other side. If the declarer were to lead low toward the queen and the defense is playing properly, then he has to put up the queen to force a high honor. Then if he tries to lead the suit again, he has to put up the jack, because it's rare that if he plays the queen, if the ace and king are both in the same hand, most of the time defenders are going to take those tricks, and then your jack will be good. But remember, when you're missing 2 honors, that suit doesn't get led, assume the honors are split. Because if the opening leader has the ace and king of diamonds, for instance, what card do you think he's going to lead? He's going to lead the ace of diamonds, isn't he? The failure to lead a diamond here strongly implies that either East has both of those cards or the honors are split. That means that this diamond suit is frozen. Now, if you have the 10 with the queen and jack, then you need not fear the suit. You can set up a trick regardless of how the honors are distributed. Having the 10 means that one of those diamond cards will eventually become a trick. But lacking the 10, you don't have a sure trick in diamonds at all. So Wes is sitting here looking at his hand. He says, well, I can either take the spade finesse, or I can strip out the hand and throw an opponent in. So back to the opening lead. Are you going to finesse? I think you should have figured out by now that the answer is no. If you do, and the defenders are halfway competent, you're going to lose a spade and 3 diamond tricks for down 1. So, how can West make the opponents lead the diamonds for him? You really don't care who has the king of spades. But what you need to do here is, before they can make that fatal switch to diamonds, win that ace of spades. Then draw the trumps and strip out the clubs. That gets rid of all the clubs in both of these hands. You've drawn the trumps. Each hand has 1 spade left in it. The opponents have not taken a trick yet. Once you have done that, lead that remaining small spade, or I think that's the way that you will be in your hand. Leading the queen of spades is not correct. Lead toward the queen of spades. And you don't care who wins the king, whether it's north or south. But at this point, the dummy and declarer both have only trumps and diamonds in their hands. If the opponent who wins that spade king, and if it happens to be south, say, thank goodness I didn't finesse, to yourself on that opening lead, has to either lead a diamond for you, meaning that you can play last. Whichever one of them wins it, you've got the jack over here, if they don't take the trick, or you got the queen here. So you can play low from either hand when that opponent leads a diamond, or they have to give you a rough slough. And what that means is you can rough in one hand and throw a diamond from the other, meaning you will lose only 2 diamonds and a spade and make your contract regardless of where that king of spades is sitting. This is a really nifty play technique. It may seem complicated. There are several steps to it, but you can recognize it at trick 1. Now, how do you do that? Well, every suit has a job. Every suit has a job. The key element here is that the suit where a finesse can be taken has to be divided evenly between the 2 hands. Notice back here, there are 2 spades in each hand. This technique is particularly useful for frozen suits like this, but it may be that you need an opponent to lead into a tennis for you so that you don't have to take a finesse. There are many, many ways to use this technique. So let's talk about what role each one of these suits plays. Obviously, hearts are the trump suit. As I've said, the diamonds are the frozen suit. We're not going to touch that. Some people call it a never-ever suit. I think that's what Donna Compton calls it. I've always just called them frozen suits because you just don't want to touch it at all. You want to make an opponent lead those diamonds for you. The clubs are the elimination suit. You're going to eliminate the clubs from both hands so that the opponents cannot return a card in that suit without giving you a rough and a slough. And finally, the spades are what's known as the throw-in suit. That's the suit you're going to lead to make the opponents take the trick. So remember, each one of these suits has a job. The right conditions have to exist, but it is a slick play when you have learned to master in plays. And you guys are all advanced enough now, I think, that you can learn this. It does take a little bit of work, And it takes the ability to recognize it. That's the important thing. This is not a beginning technique, play technique. This is more of an intermediate play technique. But if you haven't learned in plays, it's worth your time to study them and learn how to use them. I promise. They are so useful. So useful. Another kind of play technique that involves a throw-in is the loser on loser play, or LOL, as we call it in the bridge world. It doesn't stand for laugh out loud or little old lady, right? It just means that you're leading a loser from one hand and pitching a loser from another suit. Obviously, you don't have a card in the suit you led. Pitching a loser from another suit on that card. Now, there's one particular way to do this that I want to show you that not a lot of people think about when they're playing in a contract that has a void opposite a guarded king. This can be a very, very effective technique. Here's an example. We're in 6 spades here. Looks like we need to have the diamond finesse. Now, a lot of people, when the Queen of Hearts is led, a lot of people will rough that opening lead in the dummy, saying, well, I can rough out my king later. Then I can take the diamond finesse. Well, if it loses, you're left with 2 small diamonds on the board and an ace and 2 small diamonds in your hand. It doesn't look good, does it? Now, there's no hard and fast rule that says when you're void in a suit that you have to rough. It's just the thing that most of us think of first. Because, oh, hey, I'm void and I have gobs of trumps over there. I can definitely rough with no problem, because they haven't thought far enough ahead to say, what am I going to do if that diamond finesse doesn't work? Yeah, I can rough 2 hearts in the dummy, but I have a problem in the diamonds. So from the opening lead, you pretty much know that South has the ace. Why is that? Because competent defenders don't underlead an ace versus a suit contract, and especially not against a suit slam. Once the Queen of Hearts hits the table as the opening lead, you know South has the ace. If instead of trumping that heart, what if you discard a diamond later on? Watch what happens here. You discard a diamond on the opening lead and follow with the 4 of hearts. Now, South has to play his ace. He can see the void. If he wants a trick with that ace, he's got to take it, and he's got to take it now. So when he plays the ace of hearts, your king is now good. You've discarded one of these little diamonds. You can discard the other one on the king of hearts. Now, all of a sudden, you only have 1 diamond in the dummy, and you have the ace in your hand. And look how many trumps you have in that dummy. Man, that's a super fit. You don't have any problem at all roughing 3 diamonds in the dummy, do you? Not any problem at all. Even if you have to draw 2 rounds of trumps, you still have 4 trumps left in the dummy, and you only have 3 diamonds. So when there's a void in one hand and a guarded king in the other, next time you see that, see if it will help you to discard rather than trumping. You trade 2 possible losers in diamonds for 1 loser in hearts in this example. This is only one sort of loser-on-loser play. This is one of many, in fact. We could spend 2 lessons on loser-on-loser plays, I think, without running out of examples and different types of loser-on-loser plays. But this is one that I think not a lot of you are familiar with, and one that you should consider. Learn to look for this when you have a void in one hand opposite the guarded king in the other. Sometimes letting the opponents win that trick, that first trick, can pay enormous dividends, trading two losers for one. That's in effect what a loser on loser play is, telescoping two losers into one. Now, sometimes your contract is assured without taking a finesse. I never will forget the first time somebody told me that I had taken a practice finesse. It was a number of years ago when I had first come back to bridge after a long hiatus. And one of my opponents said, "Oh, you took a practice finesse there. That's the reason you went down." And I didn't know what in the world he was talking about. And I realized later on that that was not a compliment. But I learned from that lack of a compliment. And it's as we say frequently, you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes sometimes. So another time when you don't want to take a finesse, if there are enough tricks for you to make your contract, then don't take the finesse, particularly if it jeopardizes your contract. Now, sometimes if you're playing match points, you do want to go for an over trick. Many players will risk going off a trick in order to try to get the over trick in match points, because in match points, and that is pairs, which is what most of us play most of the time, those over tricks are golden. It can mean the difference in a top and a not so top. So sometimes you may want to do that. But if you're playing a team game or knockouts or any other form of imp scoring, the first rule of the day is make your contract. When you have enough tricks, take your tricks. Do not jeopardize it. So if the finesse doesn't jeopardize your contract, then yeah, go ahead and take it. And if it loses, oh well. But if it jeopardizes your contract, you need to think twice. Now, here's an example. This time I have flipped east and west, and I've flipped the hand positions. I didn't realize I had done this until after I had sent these slides out, so I apologize. The declarer is on the left, though, but I could have called that west. I just didn't. East is playing four spades. The opening lead is the five of hearts. You look at that and you say, well, I don't have any spade losers. I have one heart loser. Don't have any diamond losers. And with any kind of luck at all, I only have two club losers. Looks like my contract is there. What could possibly go wrong? You know, paranoid declarers do better at the bridge table than non-paranoid declarers. This is an example where having a mild, or a case where having a mild mental illness, if you want to think of it that way, is beneficial. Good declarers are often paranoid declarers. Let's think about what happens if that finesse loses. After all, underleading a king is a very aggressive opening lead, isn't it? We've talked about passive and aggressive defense. Underleading a king is very aggressive. There's a possibility South has underled the king of hearts, but in general, most defense is passive. What happens if, in looking at that dummy, North wins that heart king and turns his head to the right again and looks at the dummy? Dummy on the right, lead the weakest suit in sight. What's the weakest suit that you see there? Don't count the trump suit. Odds are that the declarer has a pretty good trump suit. So most of the time I'm looking for a weak side suit. I can see that returning a heart to my partner isn't going to help the defense at all. Doesn't look like the diamonds present much of an opportunity for me either, because I've got the ace and king is on the dummy, and if my partner has a diamond card, I'm just finessing him for the declarer. I see weakness in clubs, though. North will surely switch to a club at trick 2. This means that East's contract is in jeopardy. If the opening leader has the ace of clubs, and remember, this is another suit contract. Obviously, he doesn't have the ace and king because you have the king. He didn't lead the suit. So he could very well have the ace of clubs because he would not underlead an ace against a suit contract. If he has it, and it's possible that he does, then you don't want North leading clubs. Because if he does, you can very well end up losing 3 clubs and a heart for down 1. So what am I going to do? Well, I don't want to allow North to get the lead. So I have to go up with the ace of hearts. Notice there is a long diamond in the dummy. I have no losers in spades. I have 1 loser in hearts. No losers in diamonds. Look at the long diamond suit here. Let's unblock these diamonds after we pull the trumps. Win the ace of hearts, pull the trumps, play the honors from the short side first in diamonds, lead over to the dummy. That last card in the dummy will be a good card, because by the time the 4th round comes around, you will have the ace or king left, depending on which card you use to take the 10. Now you can discard a club. That reduces the number of club losers from possible club losers from 3 to 2. Coupled with a heart loser, that means you make your bid. But if you take the heart finesse and it loses, your contract is in jeopardy. Otherwise, though, the contract is cold. I don't know about the rest of you, but I really hate going down in a cold contract. I just feel like such an idiot when I make a poor choice, and I am a typical one that may not think far enough ahead here in order to avoid the possibility that I'm going to get a lead through the king of clubs. It's the old concept of safe hand and danger hand. I know most of you are familiar with that. So remember, East's right-hand opponent is the danger hand because he can lead through that vulnerable hanging king. You want the lead in clubs to come up to the king, not through it. So when you're thinking about how to play this hand, you need to be thinking, how can I keep North off lead? Well, at the first trick, the way you can keep North off lead is to go up with that ace. Tempting though it may be to play the queen, you risked your contract. Yeah, now sure, it could be that the ace of clubs is favorably placed, but you may not have a clue about that from the bidding. So lots of auctions don't feature competition. And sometimes even those that feature competitions don't necessarily reflect high card points. You know, people seem to be bidding on less and less all the time. So this heart finesse is a practice finesse. Don't do like I did that time long ago and take a practice finesse that ends up risking your contract. Count your tricks before you play to the opening lead. That's the secret. Stop and think, count your tricks. You've got 4 diamond tricks, you've got 5 spade tricks, and the ace of hearts. That comes to 10 every time. You don't need the heart finesse to make your contract. Now, we've talked about instances where the declarer should reject an opportunity to finesse. So that begs a question. How does the declarer know how to take a finesse that is indicated? Here are some examples on how to figure out how to do that. The first one says, okay, the jack is led. The dummy has ace, queen, and a small one. The suit wasn't bid, so declarer has no idea where the king lies. And remember, the lead of the jack could be the top of an interior sequence and not necessarily the top card in the suit. The lead of the Jack promises the 10, but the person leading the Jack may have King Jack 10XX or King Jack 10X. So from these kinds of leads are very hard to read, both for the declarer and for the leader's partner. So if the declarer cannot afford to give up the lead, then you must finesse. That sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? But if you can't afford to give up the lead to make your contract, then take that finesse, because that has a 50-50 chance of working. If you play the ace, then you're going to end up having to give up the lead. So in this instance, take the finesse. All right. If the declarer has a parking place, and I failed to mention that this was the diamond suit that was led. If the declarer has a parking place for the queen and small diamond, then he can play the ace if there's a parking place for those two losers. So in that case, go up with the ace, draw your trumps, and pitch those losing diamonds on that parking place that you had. Now, if declarer can afford to lose one trick in the suit but not two, then play the ace. If the opening leader has the king, declarer can get a trick with the queen by leading up toward the queen. Because it's certain that if that defender sees the queen on the board, he's going to take his king because he doesn't know if the suit will go around again. So you can get a trick with the queen by leading low toward it. And if the right-hand opponent has the king, she cannot lead the suit without giving you a trick with the queen. So if you can afford one loser in the suit, play the ace. If you have a parking place for two diamond losers, play the ace. But if you cannot afford to give up the lead, you must finesse. Now, this last one is a little bit difficult to see sometimes, and it's a combination that not very many people think of. Now, there will be a 5-card suit in one hand that has 2 honors in it, and the 10 or 9 opposite honor third in the other hand. In other words, we have 2 honors, 10 or 9, like King, Queen 10 or King, Queen 9, or Ace, King 10, little, opposite honor third in the other hand. The best way to play this combination of cards is to lead low from dummy and finesse the 9 or 10. That's the best way to play a suit like that when you cannot afford to lose even one trick. Let's look at some examples of how this works. Here is Ace, King 10, little, opposite the queen, little. Your first lead is to the queen. Now, I know most of you are sitting there thinking, well, gee whiz, that's an 8-card suit. Most of the time, the outstanding trumps are going to break 3-2. Well, that's very true. But as sure as I cannot afford to lose a trick, that's the time when the outstanding trumps are going to break 4-1 for me. So the best way to play this particular combination for no loser, is to lead a small card from the long side to the queen, honors from the short side first, and then lead a low card back to the 10. That enables you to take all 5 tricks, whether the outstanding cards break 3-2 or 4-1 with the guarded jack on your right. This time we have Ace, Queen 10, little, opposite King, little. If you cannot afford to lose even one trick, lead a low card over to the king. Notice this is a repeating theme. Honors from the short side first, then lead low from the dummy to the 10. Will that always work? No, it won't. It won't. But it is what's commonly called a safety play, protecting yourself from 4 trumps to the jack on your right. That happens more often than you realize. Now then, once again, we have honor third in the dummy, opposite king, queen, 10, fifth in declarer's hand. Low to the ace, and then lead a low card to the 10. And this is the same thing if the shaded card is the 9. You would rather have the 10. In fact, you'd rather have the jack. But, you know, you got to play the hand you're dealt. But you play it the same way if these red T's here are 9s instead. Now, here's another way to take a finesse and how to play it when you hold a long suit opposite 2 or 3 small in the dummy. Now, you've heard it said many, many times that when the outstanding trumps are distributed with a queen missing, that it's 8 ever, 9 never. But to be honest, the chances that the trumps will be 2-2 happens to be only about 48%. A 3-1 break is a 52% case. So regardless of the fact that we have 8 ever, 9 never, sometimes we need to take finesses for that missing queen. What you want to do is, and generally what people tell you to do missing the queen, is to cash up one high honor first in case the queen is singleton. I don't know about the rest of you, but I just hate losing a finesse to a singleton honor. That just bugs the tar out of me. So a lot of times you want to lead one of the top honors when you're missing the queen, just in case the queen is a singleton. Well, when you hold these kinds of cards, should the declarer cash a high honor first and then take the finesse, or should he just finesse? The answer to that question is dependent on the number of small cards the dummy has. Just in case right-hand opponent has queen fourth in this suit, the declarer is going to have to take 2 finesses. When there are only 2 cards in the dummy, cashing a high honor first leaves you with only 1 card in the dummy, and that means that you can only take 1 finesse. So when there are only 2 cards in the dummy, don't cash a high honor first. Go to the dummy and lead toward that jack 10. Now, having queen fourth in one hand is far more likely to happen than having the stiff queen in the other. Just think about it. The person holding 4 cards has 4 empty spaces for the queen to occupy, right? The person holding only one of them only has 1. So the odds strongly favor, if these cards are divided 4-1, that the queen is with the hand that has 4 of them. And if you need this finesse to work, then making the assumption that they might be queen fourth in your right-hand opponent's hand, you will need to take 2 finesses. If you only have 2 cards in the dummy, then you can't afford to have 1 go away on a high honor first. Now, if there are 3 cards, like example A, then you can play the ace, travel to the dummy, and lead toward the king jack, because you still have 2 cards left in the dummy. All of this isn't necessary if the cards break 3-2. But just because something has a 62% chance, there's still 38% chance that there's some other division of the cards. Now, obviously, if your right-hand opponent has all 5 of them, your left-hand opponent is void, you can't pick it up. But that is such a small chance that the safety play says if you have only 2 small cards in the dummy, don't cash that high honor first. Take 2 finesses just in case. These are examples. This is a typical example of a paranoid declarer. A lot of us will look at these suits and say, oh, yeah, well, okay, 8 ever, 9 never, all that good stuff. Particularly when you have 9 cards in the suit and you just think, well, odds are that queen's going to drop. It'll be great. Well, you need to start thinking about, even if you take a finesse, that queen may be guarded so well that you need to take 2 finesses. This is the way declarers who are paranoid play this kind of suit. When something looks like it's a lead pipe cinch, start looking around to see what make it not be a lead pipe cinch. I have been bitten more than once by making the assumption that cards are going to break favorably. And when they don't, it's like getting your head snapped back. Be on the lookout for things that might go wrong when everything looks too good to be true. Should almost feel like you're being set up in that instance. So I've come to the end of my time here.
Hi, this is Susan. Thanks for stopping by the Oklahoma Collective's YouTube channel. Basically, this channel shows recordings of our free 1-hour bridge lessons for advancing players that we offer every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time. If you would like to join us, send your contact information to the email address shown on the screen, and we'll be happy to send you the link. If you would like to follow our channel and be notified when a new recording is uploaded, just click the Oklahoma Collective button below. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.